Good morning, everyone. I'm Shruti Kulkarni. I'll be presenting our work on basically analyzing, the activity of spiking neural networks using deep sequence learning, or essentially deep learning models. So this work was done in collaboration with our collaborators from UTK and as well as Sandia National Labs. And I also want to make a note that this was primarily done, a majority of the work was also done by my colleagues Anika and Sengwan, who could not be here today. So let me begin by talking about, the main crux of, or, the background of why we need this. So essentially, as we've seen over the last day for this conference, the primary, computing model that, neuromorphic computing uses has been a neuroscience-inspired spiking neural network. And as an integral part of neuroscience research or even the neuromorphic research is how do we model and simulate these large networks of spiking neurons. So essentially, like there have been several simulators out there that people have come up with, various research groups have come up with, that essentially try to solve the underlying dynamics of these bioplausible models of neurons and synapses. And leveraging the various levels of computing resources depending on the scale of the network. So one such simulation tool that we have used in this work is the STATS, or the simulation tool for asynchronous cortical streams. That Felix Wong from Sandia National Labs will be going over in the coming days of this workshop. So essentially, using this simulation tool, we simulated, this reservoir network of spiking neurons, which is essentially our source of data. So, so while we have these tools, while we have a lot of these simulation tools out there, which can scale up the spiking neural network simulations, the other question that we want to that we try to address in our current research or in this presentation that I'll be going over is how do we analyze this simulation data. So one such proposed approach that we have is, can we use deep learning models to process the temporal data coming out of this spiking neural network simulators. And again, like as we know that we are essentially scaling up the simulation, the spiking neural network simulation, but at the same time, can these analysis tools or models can they be scalable? Can they also scale up to match the the speed of the scale of the SNN simulations? So before I go into the crux of this problem, let me just introduce give a brief introduction to the different types of neural data that we are using in this research. So our source of data for this effort comes from a reservoir of a reservoir network of spiking neurons, which has overall 1,000 neurons with an 80-20 split of excitatory and inhibitory neurons. So this is a very commonly used bioplausible model of bioplausible simulated model that kind of mimics the cortical structure as well. And this particular network was simulated by applying a random thalamic input, giving us an output spikes per neuron at an average rate of 10 hertz. So we basically have three ways of representing the neural data. And this is again like considering the spike streams that are coming out of the different spike streams coming out of this network, as we first assuming them to be like independently available. There are three different ways of representing the data. One is simple, the binary spikes, SI of t. The other was to take a low pass filter of these spike signals that you see in the second panel over there by convolving it with a low pass filter kernel. And the third is to basically consider like an average or compute the spike rate over a moving window. That's what you see in the third panel. And another way that we looked at, considered in order to represent this data was what we termed it as causal components. So this was this was based off another work done by Brad Thielman from Sandia. Can we combine the activity as well as the network structure to come up with a compressed representation? So as you'll see in the future slides, how we basically use these different data representations. So the causal components essentially consists of, the actual activity that takes the exponential of the pre and the postsynaptic spikes and then multiplies it with that particular neuronal weight to get us somewhat a compressed representation from the sparse data. So now coming to the crux of this presentation is what are our research goals. So we try to address the questions of, how can deep learning models be used to, can they come up with a reduced order, representation of this large scale simulation data? And can they help us predict, spike sequences as an alternative to an SNN simulation tool? And also, I think the most important thing is, like, can they help, understanding the transition of, why are the spikes happening the way they are happening? So our proposed approach basically includes two methods. One is can we get a reduced order representation, and the second is, can we compute the attention of each network as when the deep learning model is used for a spike prediction task. So for the first approach, we use basically a long short-term memory autoencoder in order to come up with a compressed representation from the large-scale neural data. So we trained this a simple three-layered basically three unit LSTM autoencoder, where the center the encoded layer basically tries to compress the activities from 800 neurons into 100 unit representation. So we can see that the model converged in about 1,000 epochs of training, and to show some sample outputs from this model, we can see that like you have the binary spike raster at the extreme left and the reconstructed output. So there is some level of resemblance, in capturing the temporal variations across, in a 20 time step sequence. But however, we also look at, the encoded output that is basically compressing the data from the 800 neurons into just 100 units sequence. It seems to be static over time. So sorry. So we also looked at, how is the encoded output, being represented across the multiple test sequences. So we calculated the variance, and it seems to be, and as you can see that it is more or less for all the 100 encoded outputs, the variance is quite low. So which means that the model is more or less trying to come up with like a static representation across the samples, not capturing the temporal variations. So this was one of our findings. Now, next we moved on to another model, another way of analyzing the data. They can be used like a transformer model, and then come up with an understanding of how the different spike sequences are related, and do they capture does this model give us some explainability of the the reservoir network that we simulated. So what we used was a temporal fusion transformer model, which basically consists of the LSTM embedding layer along with the attention mechanism. So the inputs that are applied basically consist of history sequence, along with the known time step values and the neuronal IDs. And the goal is to be able to predict the spike for TH or H time steps in the future. And then finally, we want to analyze the attention weights. Now, coming to the underlying task. So we applied we trained the model to predict both the average spike rate, what you see on the left side of the entire network, and then what you see on the left, on the right-hand side is the how good is the model in predicting the individual spike rates. So as you can see, that comparing with the ground truth, the actual spike rate in the network and the predicted, it seems to follow the trend very closely. And then you can also see that the spike rate sequences are, as an example, across multiple neurons, that they are predicted with great, that the model is able to predict it successfully. So So now we know that the temporal fusion model is able to do the sequence prediction task correctly. And then, as I also mentioned previously, that the underlying the spike rate sequences are basically independently assumed to be IIDs, that there is no underlying assumption of the network connectivity when we carry out this data. So in order to measure, like do the attention weights capture the underlying ground truth that is basically the network connectivity. So what you see on the left side is the network adjacency heat map. And what you see on the next panel is basically the correlation of the attention weights, and then how the attention weights compare, or how the similarity of these with the ground truth. So you can see that the regions of high connectivity seems to be captured quite well in the attention maps. And also what you see on the rightmost panel is the dependence across the various temporal regions. So it seems that the closer in time, the has a more impact on predicting the next sequence of the spike rates. And another similarity that we computed was to look at the mean attention weights and also the causal in the mean of the overall causal component sequences. So this also, like that I mentioned earlier, the causal components are basically reduced order representation. And here also the similar trend was captured by the attention weights, that they showed high similarities as compared to the ground truth, which is the causal components in our case. So that basically concludes our the presentation of the two of our approaches. So basically, we demonstrated two approaches. One is, can we compress the data, and also can we use the attention mechanisms to understand the causal relations, or in the underlying relations of the spikes that are generated. As future directions, like we have shown an initial attempt at trying to leverage the existing deep learning literature out there to analyze the spike data, and then the goal is in the future, can we use them to calculate or compute reduced order cognitive models, and also can we do more in order to come up with causal representation between the different neuronal groups, and eventually it might this could also, I think there's a great opportunity to go in for co-designing of efficient hardware by understanding the attention mechanisms and leveraging some of the deep learning tools out there. So that concludes my talk, and these are our funding agencies, and these are our contacts if you have more questions. Thank you.